Welcome to Backstage with Richard Ridge. Stephen Schwartz and John-Michael Tebelak created the worldwide phenomenon Godspell. The beloved musical is celebrating its 50th anniversary, and I've assembled over a dozen original cast members from New York and Toronto, including Andrea Martin, Martin Short, and Paul Schaefer, and they all reminisce about what it was like being a part of this legendary musical. Enjoy. I'm so thrilled to have you all here today as we mark the 50th anniversary of Godspell. Please tell me how life-changing this musical has been for each of you. So let's see. Andrea, why don't I just start with you?
Let's start with Andrea. I want to hear what Andrea said.
Yeah.
You know what? Thank you, Richard, for doing this. Hello, friends. You know what I was thinking a few minutes ago as I was applying a lot of erase under my eyes? I was thinking, boy, you know what? I wouldn't have met my husband at the time. I wouldn't have had my children. I wouldn't have had a career. I mean, we all, Paul and Dawn and Marty, I think that's it in that company in Toronto. We all met for the first time, and then Marty and Nancy, his wife, were in the show, and then Nancy and they introduced me to Nancy's brother, and then we got married. And you know, it's really, Godspell's more than just career changing. I think it really has given me a life. I don't want to be exaggerating, but it's really true. It was that instrumental, really.
Yeah. Marty Short, for you, how life-changing was this musical for you?
Well, it was completed because I was still in university. I was going to be a social worker.
Yeah. Also, Marty, down here they say college. They say college. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was in college then,
Yeah.
and I entered to be a doctor, and then I realized I didn't like science. I was just a fan of Chad Everett's work on medical science. I switched to social work.
Yes.
And then I was just so excited when I got this, I didn't have to go to school anymore. So that was the big excitement. And then this idea that you would actually be paid for something that you had a fantasy world in doing, it was the greatest thing ever. And it was, I had given myself a year contract to be in show business, and that whole year I now had a job. It was unbelievable. And I met all these people, Andrea and Paul and Eugene Levy and Jane Eastwood, et cetera, that became lifelong friends.
Peggy, for you, how life-changing has this been for you?
Okay, so I'm so glad we got this question ahead of time, because I edited my answer. It's under 2 minutes. That was actually longer than my answer is going to be. We were in a unique position because we didn't just co-author this show with John-Michael at La Mama, and I will talk about that first night in a second. We authored our characters. So there have been 4 books written about Godspell. I'm in all of them, so I'm not pushing this one for any other reason other than it's going to answer the question that I'm not going to answer right now because it's going to take too long. The Godspell Experience is an amazing book, and it really discusses the Genesis story, what I consider to be the Genesis and the raison d'etre of Godspell. But our first night at La Mama, and obviously I'm not going to talk about it, buy the book and you'll read the Genesis story. We were sitting on the floor on a rug. I like to romanticize it, but we're on the floor and we are clustered together facing John-Michael. He's here and he's telling us about this horrible experience he had at an Easter Sunday church service, which is in the book, so I'm not going to talk about it. He fast forwarded too. So here's what we're going to do. He said, we're going to take Jesus out of the church. We're going to throw him into a child's fence playground. He said, you will be 8 pontificating philosophers on a world stage, blah, blah, blah. When after the baptism, you will come off, you will come back on. It'll be a constructive amnesia. You'll know nothing, nothing. You'll be like pre-adolescent children who know nothing, who will be taught through play by our piper, Stephen Nathan, through play, this singular raison d'etre of Godspell, which is, was there any spiritual sustenance in what this guy, Jesus, is purported to have said and done? In a child's fence playground through play. And we all went, oh my God, seriously? That's like so great. So we were in an extraordinary position as a result of that. So we co-created this thing with John-Michael. We did everything we could to manifest his vision. And so for me, how this show has been life-changing was not just because I co-authored this show with two of my amazing crew sitting here, but I authored this character and I got to see all these Peggy clowns and all these companies sort of doing their version of what I had created, which was amazing. I got to sing my own song, create my own choreography. Oh my God, where's the suffering? But the bottom line of it is, for me, it was John-Michael's vision. He said, I want to create a childlike world that an audience can enter into and experience through play what this show is about, which is ultimately the formation of a community which will be drenched in love and joy, which will be the polar opposite of what John-Michael was exposed to at this Easter Sunday church service. So for me, the show is about that childlike world of love and joy, which is why I guess people still want to do the show.
It was utterly life-changing. I mean, it gave me a life, it gave me my career, and it taught us a lot. I mean, we went into this without any reverence for the producers. We just did whatever the hell we wanted, and it was real life lesson, to do something simply for the love of it, simply because we were a family, and we were at that point.
Can I say your quote? Because I loved your quote. Stephen would say to the producers, "When do you have to see it for? You'll see it when it opens."
Oh yeah, we did. We actually had a run through. We were going to do a run through. Yeah. And Edgar and Joe said, "Well, what time is it?" And I said, "Well, what difference does it make? We want to come to the run through." And I said, No, you don't have to come to the run through. We see it in previews with everybody else. And they went, "Well, that's not how it works." And we all went, "Well, but that's how this works." I mean,
know.
You can't. I think they wanted to put Sonia in a little
right. I know.
Costume. They needed more sex. Godspell needed more sex.
That was one of our wonderful screaming fights that we had with them that we won. We won every fight. Yeah.
That's great. And then for Gilmer and for Stephen, you two met during this, right?
Yes, we did.
Tell us that. How life-changing has this been for you two?
Well, like Andrea, I've met my husband and had two beautiful children, so that was life-changing. And I think for me, it's really gratefulness to have been a part of something that was kind of like musical history. Just to be a part of that was amazing. And also, as I said, just meeting him, and that's quite life-changing. That's kind of all I have to say, really.
Steve, for you.
Well, I would second that. I was at the time that Steve gave me the call. I was working with him on Pippin, and I had no idea. I mean, it was just a kind of a side job that he was doing it on the side. I was doing it on the side, and I had no idea when he called me for that. And I said yes, that would be the beginning of the rest of my life. I had no clue whatsoever that I would be put into a whole world. I've been in the dance world. That's where I came from. And suddenly he said, will you play piano for this? And I said, okay. And that was it. It was just life-changing. I met Gilmer. I met all of these wonderful people and so many others and so many other companies and good friends. And that took me from there to there to there to there to where I am here today. And if not for that, I have no idea where I'd be.
It all starts with Godspell.
It sure does.
Paul Schaefer, for you, did you play someone's audition? Is that how it all began for you?
Oh, Steve,
Absolutely.
No.
Yes. First of all,
by the way, let me just say, Richie, that you and Paul could be father-son. I'm just looking.
We could be.
Yeah,
yes. And you, of course, I would be the son, of course. Stephen Gilmer, I didn't realize it was you guys. Unbelievable. Well, you know, we only saw Steve with glasses. And so this is one, yeah, Gilmer looks younger than ever. So I can't believe it. Did you have anything to do with drugging that horse at the Derby? Was that you?
Yes.
I knew it was.
She
We were
wanted
passing.
she wanted the small horse to win.
I know. And I have always thought that Sonia should be wearing a little thing, like a leotard. But enough about me. I was not auditioning for anything, but was accompanying a couple of ladies that I knew up in Toronto who were going up for parts in Godspell. And, you know, when a show from New York like Godspell came and was open auditions in Toronto, everybody came out, everybody in the right age range. And obviously all the most talented people in town came out. And I went, played with for my two friends, one after another. The second one sang Bless the Lord. The two of us had learned it from the cast album, and we went and played it. And after that, Stephen Schwartz was in town doing the final casting. So these were the callbacks. And he was listening to everybody sing. And after the second girl sang, whom I played for, he said, I want to talk to that piano player. And I came over to him and he says, could you play the rest of the auditions? Because I just like the way you play and you seem to know all the songs, you know, because a lot of people were singing the same songs, from Heart of Gold by Neil Young, or Aquarius from Hair, you know, which of course was Eugene Levy's. Anyway, I only too happily played the rest of the auditions. And I played for all the people who eventually got hired. I played for Martin Short. I played for Gilda Radner. I played for Eugene Levy and Victor Garber and all the rest of the kids. And at the end of the day, after Stephen Schwartz had put together his cast, he said to me, can you get a band together and conduct this show? Well, like Marty, I was right out of college too. But I said yes. And I learned all the songs off the record, except when the prologue arrived. Oh my God, it wasn't on the record and it was just 60, you know. And then I came into the rehearsal and Steve Reinhardt, the great Steve Reinhardt, was there.
There he is.
To teach us all of the music and me, how to conduct and play it. And he sat down and played this prologue at lightning speed. I said, oh my God, I was playing it at quarter the speed. Anyway, everybody, accepted me, and Stephen Schwartz eventually brought me into New York to play for him in the Magic Show. And Stephen Gilmer were both so wonderful to me. I would be at their house for Thanksgiving and stuff with Jeff Milet and Schwartz down the road. And I'm telling you, obviously it changed my whole life.
Yeah. Donnie, for you, Don Scardino.
Well, I was not in college. My only degree is 98.6.
Oh,
I was a professional child actor from age 12 or 13. So I worked on Broadway and TV and films and all that stuff. And I was working in Toronto, and I'd become friendly with Victor, and I ran into him and a lot of these kids at rehearsal lunch one day. And he said, you'd be perfect for this thing. Don't come near the theater. So I went back to New York, and then I got a call a couple of weeks later saying, I got the movie. And I said, you're the only guy who can replace me. And so they gave me a ticket. I sat on the steps, actually, and I watched Godspell. I hadn't seen it. I'd heard some of the music. And I think Andy was playing Jesus. I think the rest of you guys had gone to LA at that point. And I watched it transfixed, exhilarated, moved, and horrified, because I said, I can't do that. I can't even conceive of this person, this clown person, off the stage as a human being. He was so completely otherworldly in a way, and the show was so special. I thought, I can't do this. Well, they want you to come and do it because Edgar Lansbury said I had the face for it. How's that for an audition? And so I had some papers that sort of allowed me to go back to Canada to work. So I went up to Canada to work, and I had like a week to get in. And I went that night to the show and saw Victor Garber, and I saw him like this Botticelli angel, this tall. I said, I can't do this. I can't do this. And then I went back and I looked at some something from the Today Show of Stephen. Of course, I've been listening to Stephen on the record. And again, I thought, and here was this incredible sort of Groucho Marx inspired clown informing this other part of this character. And I said, well, I can't do that either. I can't do any of this. And I was terrified. So I sprained both my ankles. It's true, in rehearsal. And the doctor said, well, I said, I'm going on in a week. And they said, you can't. You can't. I'm wrapping your ankles with elastoplast casts because you cannot perform. You'll ruin your ankles for the rest of your life. I have to, I'm going to be Jesus. I have to go on. And so I did anyway. I performed these elastoplast casts thinking, I can't do this. And I never did really. No, I did. I mean, finally it all came together kind of like Stephen's is astonishing. And again, I only had the voice in my ear and a couple of little clips. And the Mayor Baba pin was iconic for me because I'd read a lot of Mayor Baba. So I thought, this guy's spiritually on this road and he's informing this part with this thing. So what I did was I stood on three very large shoulders, Stephen's, Andy's, and Victor's, because those are the guys I'd seen. Without that, and I somehow cobbled together my own, as someone said, affectionately, I hope, Huck Finn Jesus. And there it was. But I couldn't have done it without them. And it changed my life in that, anytime you think it scares you, something you can't possibly do, not only sing, perform, and do it 8 times a week, and never mind the ankles, but also reach into the depth of your heart and soul to produce what these guys had already brought into it and brought forward. That was astonishing to be able to reach that in some way and contribute in some way to what was already there. So facing that, I grew a lot. I also did some stupid shit during that period, but I ultimately grew a lot.
Well, for me, it was the first of almost everything theatrically. It was my first professional theatrical gig, first film, first and last hit song, first and last trip to Cannes for the film festival. It was remarkable, and I did it for three different productions, and it was glorious. It's a glorious show.
Yeah, Paul, for you.
Godspell just expanded what I felt that I could do and play on stage. I mean, I was always a clown, and so it was just like a perfect situation for me. And those years in Godspell were glorious for everyone. It was what John-Michael intended the show to be: joy on stage. That was part of the goal, and that's what it really meant to me. I mean, it was just an amazing community of people. We bounced from company to company, and it was the most joyous time.
Beautiful. Jane, for you.
Well, it was certainly my first musical. I'd never sung in front of anybody before. And I don't know what the auditions were like for you guys in New York, but ours was like almost an American Idol audition. It was just, I'd say there were 4, 5, maybe 600 people lining up outside of the Masonic Temple, complete open call. And that's where I met Eugene and Marty and Gilda and Victor, and everybody stood up and sang. And I thought, well, I'll never get in this. And I had a friend of mine accompany me, and I sang, "If they could see me now, that little gang." And so I got the turn back old man part because I was so loud and brash. And it was the music just did me in. I never have ever experienced anything like that in my life. Just from the very beginning of Judas coming in and blowing his horn and that a cappella preparing up to the very end, which moved me every single time to tears. When we got, okay, I'm crying now. This is really sad.
Joanne.
When we carried Jesus out, it just, it did me in. I think we all agree it was pure joy. And innocence, I think, was a huge, huge part of it. If you didn't have that sort of innocent well, it's kind of like believing in God, really, you know, that innocent belief. I don't think you would have made it into that show or been on that stage, because it was so real for all of us. I loved it. I adored it so much. And then I met like the funniest people I've ever met in my life, and they're still in my life. So that's amazing. And I think Victor was the only one who went to the States to do the movie with you. And Don Scardino was our Jesus. Did he ever do it with you, or did he do it down there?
Oh, I did it with Don, Andy Rohr, Steve Nathan, Dan Stone, and a host of others who kept cutting. Dean, you might have done a Jesus with me at the Promenade. I'm pretty sure. I mean, it kept going on and on. Robin, you did with a million, but you went to different towns. But oh, such a production, such a thing. For me, it was like Robin, a first Broadway show, a first opportunity at doing choreography. I'm a crazy person like Kreppel, so it was like, what? Make faces for a living? Great. I was like destined for like laughing, like those gals. So when they plunked me into this, it was a little different because Robin and the rest of the cast were really actors, you know? I mean, they had the light and the fun and adapted to the music over time, but they weren't your wah-wah Broadway, except a little, Stephen Nathan had a little in him, you know? But, and of course, Herbie. But then suddenly to all morph into this family that Kreppel's talking about, the thing that got me every night, which is why when you say, Jane, it's really got to come from a deeper place inside.
Yes.
I kept hearing over and over again every night, how many performances we do? Love thy neighbor as thyself. And I was a young, just turning 20, Long Island, New York Jewish actress, singer, dancer, and knew nothing about Jesus in this whole thing. So suddenly this guy is saying, love thy neighbor as thyself. And I got people upstairs for me, Meatloaf living above me, making lots of noise every night, you know, and going, okay, I love you, but what does that mean? And that was the thing that actually meant the most to me. And I began to find out, because Godspell has never left me or any of us, and never will. And I haven't seen all the other productions around the world, but I have seen ones in Portland, Oregon, in Boulder Creek, California, in San Jose, little small companies who found me somehow, Facebook, whatever, and said, hey, would you come to our show? You're close. And that's the most remarkable thing. It's alive everywhere.
That's beautiful.
It's alive everywhere.
Yeah.
I
Dean,
love
for
being here
you.
with you all. What?
Yep.
Well,
Dean.
you know, when we were cast in the show, is very much like what Jane was saying. We all, when we were cast at with the cast that was playing at Cherry Lane, with the exception of Joanne and one other person,
Lamar.
They were non-equity. Lamar. Every one of us were non-equity. We all lined up through the streets of Greenwich Village and auditioned to get paid $100 a week to do 8 shows a week. And when we moved from the Cherry Lane Theater to the Promenade Theater, we magically turned union. We all became union members. But for so many of us, it was our first experience. I was 19 when I was cast, and it gave us I think a false impression that, but a very valuable impression that our input really mattered. And we were always solicited for ideas and what can you bring and what can you do and how can we use what is special about you? I was never asked those questions again as an actor, but it gave me a very vaunted sense of myself and my abilities to create, which the rest of show business slowly beat out of me over the next few years.
Take me back to the Masonic Temple for all the ones from Toronto, because Godspell had been such a big hit in New York and everybody wanted to be a part of this Toronto production. And I understand like there was hundreds of people there like this, like American Idol kind of thing with everybody like cheering everybody on. But tell me about your audition, Andrea, your first one, and then how did you get cast?
So I had seen the New York company, I'd seen the London company, and I'd seen the Paris company. And also, you know, I'd done theater, unlike maybe a few people here, I actually had been doing theater in summer stock. And so I was really ensconced in, this is the right show for me, because you just have to have a big personality and not much talent, is what I thought. And then I auditioned. I was very cocky. And I auditioned with a ridiculous song, not remotely for Godspell. It was from a show called Salvation. And it went like,
Celebration.
at
Celebration.
20, man, you've had it. It was the most insane song. If you know what I mean, and you start wearing poochie pants the day you reach the... Anyway, I was very excited about singing it. And in the middle of it, just showing off, with not a particularly great voice, they said, thank you. And then this adorable little girl ran up on stage with pigtails and overalls and a little cut-off t-shirt, and she sang Zippity Doo-Dah. And the audience went insane. And I was out the door, and that was Gilda Radner, and she got it, and I was devastated. And 2 weeks later, I got a phone call from Eugene Levy. I was in Vic Tanny's, which was a gym. Do you remember that gym? Yeah, sweating off my depression, I guess. And I literally, I was in the sauna area, and I got a message over the loudspeaker, would Andrea Martin please come to the phone? And I stood there dripping with, I don't know, but I was in the sauna. And I came out. And it was Eugene Levy, who I knew because we had done an Ivan Reitman blockbuster, Cannibal Girls, together. And we were friends. And he called and he said, the girl that plays, and I can't remember the name of the character I played. My God, what is it, Robin?
Robin.
Is that what?
Yes.
Okay. I was doing so well until I had to actually remember a fact. Oh God. Anyway, he said that the person playing that part was not able to continue, and he was going to have a party the next night. And if I came to that party, the director was going to be there. And if I was myself and zany and perky and everything, then he was sure I would get the part. And I did what he told me, and I did get the part, and the rest is history. And that's the story of that.
I always thought that if I had to audition, I never would have been.
That's just what I was going to say.
Oh, that's
Never would have been. I remember I was sent to San Francisco to take over in San Francisco because I was living in LA. And I went up, and we had one day to get, for me to get in the show. So the cast assembled, we're doing a run through, and we're, after All for the Best, everybody stopped and they were laughing. And the stage manager there said, oh, that was hilarious. Okay, now let's go back and do it the right way. I went, what? What do you mean? They said, well, is that how you do it? And I went, yeah, that's how I've done it for months. And they went, oh, okay, all right. That was my dancing. I danced quite a bit like somebody wound me up,
Oh God, well, not me. I was an unbelievably entitled little 20-year-old brat. I thought I would have absolutely gotten this if I would have auditioned. I just,
no way.
Well, there is something to be said about that, because this is where the show really lucked out, I think. There was no choreographer.
That's right.
No.
So me and Joanne and everybody kind of put their thinking caps on.
Yeah.
And said, okay, what do we need to do here? And there was some stock stuff that I knew, like Turn Back, Oh Man, the Cakewalk. And I knew a lot of soft shoe. So that came in handy. Joanne was great at doing little things with arms and stuff like that. She was great. And so between the two of us, maybe other people were involved directly. But
yeah, I did the girls.
We never needed a choreographer.
We didn't. It was collective. I mean, I always credit Joanne and Steve, because we came up with insanely crazy stuff that was dangerous. Like in Bless the Lord, and the guys, we would jump over. They would, we came up with stuff that, could have gotten everybody killed. And seriously, Steve and Joanne figured out how we could do everything safely. The stuff with the planks and the horses. And just everything was insane. And we tried everything. In fact, remember with Turn Back, we tried a bunch of stuff and nothing worked until the cakewalk. And then we had to make the cakewalk silly. But Steve is right. It was collective. And I always say about Steve, you know, he will not say this about himself, and I have to say it. He wore 4 hats. 4. He was the lead singer on the Willows, the piano player, the musical director, and the unofficial co-dance captain with Joanne.
Yeah.
So
That's great. You know, Marty, I was going to ask you, do you remember your audition, your final callback, Marty? And was it between you and somebody else?
Yes, it was. I don't know who that guy was. He never made it. But I sang, I remember seeing Gilda as well, doing Zippity Doo Dah, and thinking I may have miscalculated, because I was doing My Funny Valentine. and they were, you know, going crazy over her. But, and Paul played My Funny Valentine. And I remember it was down to me and another guy. And I remember Stephen Schwartz was on the stage, and he went, "You're both really so very good, but I think we're going to go with," and then he paused, "Martin." And I went,
Goodness.
and Eugene Levy and I were, you know, very close friends. So we couldn't believe that out of all these hundreds of people, we both got it. And remember, we went back to the back of the Masonic Temple. There was a payphone, and we kept taking turns. We only had so many dimes to phone everyone we knew and say we got it.
Do you remember your callback and how you got cast?
Well, yeah, it was very much a cattle call kind of atmosphere,
Yeah.
and there were literally hundreds and hundreds of us snaking through the streets of Greenwich Village, and there were people with guitars and people with frisbees and people hanging out and smoking dope, and we slowly would make our way to the theater. They would take us in groups of 5 and let us sing a short phrase of something. Then they would type you out, and then they'd ask you to hold on, and then they'd bring you back again. I don't remember any of my fellow auditionees in the audience, but I do remember being brought back I think 3 more days, and we were thrown improv. And we were all having to get up on stage and respond to musical cues. And can you do this dance step? And it was really, like somebody said, it's like the total American Idol kind of thing, except you have to do everything.
Yeah. Joanne, what do you remember about your callback, your final audition when you got cast?
This sounds a little strange, but I didn't audition for the show. I worked with Stephen Schwartz in summer stock. He came back to New York. I went off and did God, what did I do? I did Bye Bye Birdie in Morgan, New Jersey, waiting, you know, for the next best thing. He gave me a call and he said, "I'm doing this play. It's going to be a musical. It's being done off-Broadway right now, off-Broadway right now at La Mama." He said, "I'm rewriting all the music. I know your voice. We just worked together this summer." He said, "I want you to do this. But first you have to come with me to Edgar Lansbury's house," I think it was, "and sing in front of the existing cast with Lamar Alford, Day by Day, and about 6 other songs, all good gifts, et cetera, et cetera." And I went, heck, I'm not doing anything, sure. And I worked with him for about 3 or 4 rehearsals with Lamar. We came to this apartment where I met Robin for the first time and Sonia for the first time, and they were not particularly happy that we were there, but didn't know what was going to happen at first because their baby, La Mama show was so different on a lot of levels. The heart was there, the music was different, and there's Stephen Schwartz bringing Broadway to it. They understood the intelligence behind it, but you know, the combination. And then we sang, and their energetics actually shifted during the course of it, because I think there was a lot of appreciation going on for the fact that we could bring it. And that was, you know, it was like very important that somebody sings, you know, a few harmonies here and there. But I tell you what, that was it for me. And it was really like a family member said, "Hey, come, I'm putting on a show, be in it." And that was unusual. Never again. I auditioned for everything else I ever did. But
that's great. No audition for you. That's great. Robin, for you.
Well, I didn't audition either. But that's because I was in at the very, very beginning at Carnegie Mellon as a drama student. So I do remember the casting notice board. One day, Sonia Manzano and I were walking down the halls of the Fine Arts Building, and we saw our names on the casting list as clown number 4 and clown number 6. And because we were hoping to do Chekhov or some Shakespeare, this seemed a real takedown, and we weren't sure what it would be like. But sure enough, we got involved in putting this wildly different, odd theatrical experience together that John-Michael had conceived. And it was amazing. We did it in a matter of 2 or 3 weeks and only had a couple of performances.
Wow.
That's
And
great.
then what happened? Where did you go after that?
Yeah.
Well, most of us, stayed at school.
Right.
And then we all got a call asking us if we wanted to leave school and go to the Café La Mama. And only 3 of us said yes immediately, assuming that once Café La Mama was done, we'd return to Carnegie and get our degrees. But as Joanne explained, once Stephen got involved, we went right from the Café La Mama. I think we did go, the 3 of us went back to school for a couple of weeks, but then they said, no, it's gotten picked up off-Broadway. Do you want to come? And we said, yeah.
Did you ever graduate?
No, I did not.
But
Not from Carnegie anyway.
Yeah.
I did go on to
Fabulous.
graduate elsewhere, but
I love that. Paul, for you, do you remember your callback?
I
And how you were
remember
cast?
the callback. I don't remember my callback. I remember sitting in the Promenade Theater.
Yeah.
A friend of mine said, you got to come and audition for this show. And there were a lot of people there that were auditioning. They had us in the room. It was kind of a thing they did with rock musicals. I know they did that with Hair too. You sat around and watched the other people audition. And but what I do remember is somebody got up and they sang Michael Row the Boat Ashore, and they didn't do a terribly good job, and they got off the stage. And the next person to get up on stage was Dolores Hall. And if anybody doesn't know who she is, Google her. And she stood up there and they said, Dolores, what would you like to sing? And she said, I'll sing what he sang. And they said, what key? And she said, I don't care. And she opened her mouth and just blew the roof off the place. This is before she won a Tony for Your Arms for Shoulders to Box with God. And she tore the roof off every night singing Bless the Lord. And she was amazing. That I remember.
That is great. I'd love for everybody to share a favorite memory, because I'm sure you've all got so many during your whole Godspell experience. So whoever wants to start, just one of your favorite memories of doing this show or something like that, or maybe happened during the show, or just what, a favorite memory. Who wants to go first? Nobody wants.
I'll go first.
Steve,
Okay.
Steve and Nathan.
David Nathan.
Well, I mean, the best memory is really being a part of the group, doing the show. But I do remember when we opened, we sold out all through previews. Everything was fabulous until the New York Times review came out. And Barnes didn't much like the show.
Yeah.
And at that point, we all thought, well, we're screwed. The theater wasn't full. And I was really pissed off because his review was ridiculous. He said, if you go to church a lot, you might like the show, but I don't know anybody else who would. So I was pissed off, and I sat down and I wrote a letter to Clive Barnes. And I said, this is ridiculous. You should have chosen someone else to go and review the show. This is not right. To say that you had to be a Christian to like Godspell is like saying you had to be Jewish to like Fiddler on the Roof, or an American to like 1776. And I wrote this big long letter and thought, I can't send this letter with my name on it. It's ridiculous. So I went next door to the guy who lived in the apartment next to me, and I said, can I sign your name and put the return address on it? And he said, yes. So I send it off. And then one Sunday afternoon, it was like the next Sunday afternoon, we had the press person came and said, Clive Barnes is going to be talking about the show on WQXR because he had a Sunday theater show. So we all gathered around outside with a little transistor radio because there was no reception in the theater, and he read the letter, and he said, "You know what? I think this letter is right. I should go back. I should look at the show again. I should."
Wow.
And
yeah, but you know why he said that? He said that because Walter Kerr in that Sunday Arts and Leisure section gave us a rave review. Ha ha.
Yeah. And he went back, and then slowly business came back. So it was my neighbor who did it all. Right?
Who saved Godspell. I love it.
The neighbor who saved Godspell.
He actually
Who wants to go
probably- maybe I should come back sober.
I'll go next.
You know, Clive liked to. Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
Go ahead, Gilmer.
go, sweetie.
Yep.
Well, I have two, and one's real short, and that's just, Nathan, do you remember when Jeffrey farted in the Ohm Circle? My name is known. Remember that? And we were supposed to, and pretty soon it was going, and then it was getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And Nathan was over there saying, we sounded like a warped record. Do you remember that?
Yes.
But my other favorite memory was when we were at the crucifixion, and Herbie and I were downstage left, and he was right next to me, and we were writhing and writhing, and Herbie, we had worked it out, like Peggy said, that you don't hit each other, you know, writhing, and we were writhing, and Herbie was like this, and suddenly he went, ugh, 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 and he kept writhing, but well, I found out at the end that a cockroach had fallen from here into his mouth, and he carried on wonderfully. But I'll never forget him. It's just so funny.
We spent all of our time together. We loved each other, maybe a little too much in some instances. Like Marty used to, you know, the poster, and he do just like, day by day, day by day. Oh dear Lord. Like we loved each other a lot. And I lost a very good boyfriend because of Godspell, actually, because I couldn't get enough of these people. And it just, nobody else compared. I mean, that was the downside. I just spent all my time with them. We'd be singing the show songs at a party afterwards. You'd think we would get enough of that music, but no, you know?
I think for a lot of us, what we discovered through that is what Dean was saying, that we were asked for a contribution, and then we were never asked again. But I never waited for anybody to ask me after that. I decided that that's part of something that I would do, and if they didn't like it, they didn't like it. But the point being that it was play. We played, and it was less of a backstage, you know, it started at the top. It started with Edgar. It started with John-Michael. It started with their attitude about the chemistry of the people on stage, and it carried through. Never a machine. It was making money. It had 9 North American companies in the first year. Nobody does that. Nobody just throws that together. Most unorthodox creation of a show, maybe ever, for one that became that successful.
I had been up on a platform playing for this show for what seemed forever. So I'd be up there and I'd be listening to the show. That was my only experience of it. And one day I said, Steve, I haven't seen this show. Do you mind if I sit and watch this kind of rough run through? He said, oh my God, of course. So he went up on the platform and played, and I watched the show and I said, this is a hit. If this is not a hit, I don't know what is. It was the funniest thing I'd ever seen. The funniest thing I'd ever seen. I said, I can't believe what they're doing with these gospels. It's just so creative and so wonderful. And that was when I knew, you know, no matter what happens, this is where I belong, helping whatever's going on up there.
Robin, do you remember the first time you heard Day by Day?
Yes, I do. I believe it was in Edgar's house, the night that Joanne was talking about when we all were for the first time together. We loved it. We loved it. You know, a lot of Joanne references some of the hesitation for those of us who came from Carnegie and then Cafe La Mama with, I wouldn't call it a score, they were songs. But the first time we heard, at least I heard Stephen's score, I thought, wow, this is incredible. And I do believe it is an amazing piece of work that's going to keep the show going for a very, very long time.
Okay, so we're at the Royal Alex, which is the biggest theater in Toronto. I couldn't believe we were there. And Valda Avix, who sang by my side, she had a very bad night. And Marty said, "I'll take over." And so Marty and I used to sit beside each other, you know, and the lights are low, and it's such a sensitive, beautiful, moving song. And Marty started out, "Where are you going? Where are you going? Can you take me with you? Na, 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 na." He did not know the lyrics. He did not know them at all. And I lost it. I started to laugh. Well, I tried really hard not to laugh. And the more you try not to laugh, well, then you just wet your knickers. So I was done. I was completely done. And then Marty started to laugh. And I think hopefully some responsible professional person took over the song, but I'll never forget that as long as I live. Oh my God.
Marty Short, favorite memory for you?
Well, I would have two. One would certainly be that first preview at the Royal Alexandra Theatre in Toronto. That moment where we finished the first show and we all as a group huddled and cheered and couldn't believe we'd actually pulled this off in this beautiful theater that was sold out. But the other one was Andrea. We were in the huddle and Andrea said, we're going, and Andrea said, "You're doing your opening speech like an Italian." And none of us knew what she meant. And then I opened up with, "I honor and love you, but I shall obey God, brother." And it ends, "And if I'm not then I'm speaking in untruth." I said, "Untruth." And I started to laugh during Wherefore, O Men of Athens. Then the next person I think was Avril Chown. She started laughing. Gilda laughed. Andrea laughed. Everyone in the cast was laughing to the point that the stage manager, Don Thomas, was going to black out the show and demand we restart. And I remember we all had to run through the audience. We had to change into our clown things at the back of the theater there. And Gilda was actually crying because we were all so embarrassed and out of control. And it was all because of Andrea.
When Godspell played Washington, D.C., we were at Ford's Theater, which is a national monument and consequently under the protection of the National Park Service. And when we first began our run there, we did not know that the National Park Service had a patrol that would go out to the Washington Monument and the Lincoln Memorial and to Ford's Theater, especially late at night and on weekends, to just make sure the grounds were safe. So early in the run, one Saturday night, we did a show at 6 o'clock and a show at 9 o'clock. And after the 6 o'clock show, 3 of our band members went into the alley behind the theater to share a joint, where they were found by the National Park Service Patrol, who promptly arrested our band. And the stage manager had to call us together to tell us that our band is now in handcuffs and we were going to go on with our pianist, except that we had one guy in our cast, Scotch Byerly, who sang We Beseech Thee, and he was a rather adept drummer. He was a really good drummer. So he got out of costume. His understudy got into his costume. Scotch got into streetwear, went up to the band loft, and he and the pianist played the second show, and we sang extra loud to compensate for the absence of the other instruments.
Wow.
And then sometime in the course of the night, phone calls were made at the highest levels, and the guys were released from lockup. And the next day at noon, at 2 o'clock, we went on with a full band.
Dean, that's great.
You know, when you start off in show business with that kind of collaboration and that kind of abandon, and that kind of mischievousness on stage, and you know, you kind of I don't know if you have that expectation with everything that you do, but certainly part of you's thinking, well, shouldn't I be loose and just be having fun and spontaneous and improvising? And I don't know. It was a very, uninhibited, joyful time. And when you start off like that, I guess the expectation is that everything you hope will be like that. And for the most part in my career, it actually has been. And maybe I can contribute that to Godspell. Also, when you have a group like that having to, and I know the New York company can talk about it more, truthfully having to be based on trust. It really was like one big acting exercise of trust, where you all, that group thing where one person falls back and the other person catches them. And I think nobody probably thought of that at the time. When I look back at it, I think it didn't feel competitive. It felt like a lot of like-minded people trusting and having fun and being in a playground, like Peggy mentioned. That was really true. That's theater at the best, I think, being in a playground. That's why rehearsals are so great. So that's my kind of overall memory.
The things that I remember was some of the people that showed up to see it. I remember when the Berrigans, who were, anti-war priests or minister, or I forget which ministry they were from, but the Berrigans, when one of them was released from jail because he was protesting the war, that night they came to the show and they said that meant that much to them. And then in a whole other way, the night Liv Ullmann and Max von Sydow came to see the show in the middle of the winter, came backstage in these long, gorgeous fur coats looking like Nordic gods and goddesses. And we were just like, hello, look, we're talking 50 years ago. So, to me, every moment on stage, yes, there were plenty, and I wouldn't know where to start.
I think for me, a memory goes back to the very, very inception. At Carnegie, we were in the studio theater, and our very first performance of the show, we couldn't carry Jesus out through the audience. The only way to leave the theater was to go around the fence and leave through the back bay doors that were visible through the open set. And here we were carrying Jesus out of the theater, singing "Long Live God" and "Prepare ye the way of the Lord." And it had started to snow. And we carried him out of the theater until the snow and the darkness swallowed us up. And some of the people in the audience told us later, they said, it was as if you had disappeared into the world. And to me, that's kind of a magical moment and a reflection of what this show has been for numerous cast members, for audiences all over the world. It's a magical theatrical experience, and just what John-Michael had in mind.
Beautiful.
Beautiful.
Lamar is actually the memory I'm going to share. I love him so much, miss him so much. And this also is one of the reasons why somebody said to me, why is the original cast, why do you call yourselves the Rat Family? And I said, here's why. Cherry Lane, which we loved. John-Michael was sitting in the house watching the rehearsal, and we were improvising on stage the first week. And John-Michael was trying to get Lamar to be a child and open up and, feel the spirit of Godspell, etc. So all of a sudden, Lamar ran down stage screaming, "Rat, rat!" like that. And then John-Michael went, yes, Lamar, that's passion, that's the freedom, that's exactly what I've been trying to get you. And Lamar said, no, darling, there's a rat the size of a Buick sitting right next to you. And it was this, and it wasn't a little, it was like huge rat just going, watching the rehearsal. Yeah. So we became, I am Peggy Gord Rat, that is Stephen Nath Rat, and that's Gilmer McRat. We are the Rat Family. That's my Lamar.
Beautiful.
This guy, Lamar, meeting him, he and I shared a dressing room together. And he was the wildest, craziest, flamboyant, loving, big-hearted person in the world. And coming to the theater every night and getting in a room with him, the two of us, it was, the newbies, the babies, but, just a love. And then everybody, here's an interesting thing. I'm going to put a picture up. I keep doing this because I'm hiding, I'm hiding Nina and Jeffrey. I can't get out of the way here. Boom. Yeah, I'll try to get it so you can see them because there we go. This was one very, very, very special picture. And Robin remembers, there she is right next to Stephen. But what's special about this picture is on the left there, you see Peter, and there's Andy Rohr, and there's Richie Labonte, and then Jesse Cutler. I went to high school with Jesse Cutler. And the drummer, Ricky Shutter's there somewhere. I went to high school with those boys. So talk about family. And then as you go around, Herbie, God bless him. Mwah. And there's John-Michael behind Stephen. And you go, I don't know who the gentleman is right to the right of, does anybody know who that is next to Stephen between Lamar? But then as you go around and there's Repel and there's Baru. I mean, this to me was what it was all about.
There was a time in the intermission on Broadway where this group of nuns came up, and one about 40 years old or so got her wine, and they were all kind of giggling and they were having a great time, and she put her wine down and she grabbed me and she kissed me full on the lips. And said, I've been married to you for 13 years and I never knew you were so cute. And there was the time when Martin, you may remember, that's a true story. You may remember this, Martin, when we were at the Bayview Playhouse and somebody came to Don Thomas came to the door and said, there's a fan out here who wants to talk to Jesus. And so I walked out and she was holding a book, a Bible. And she said, do you believe everything that Jesus said was true? And I said, what? Yes, of course. And she said, then how can you do this blasphemy? And she whacked me upside the head with the Bible. And both Martin, Eugene, and Don Thomas came out to grab this woman and pull her out of the dressing room.
Completely insane.
Completely insane. She's just screaming, yelling. That's the flip side of the nuns, I guess. But and then there was the time when during the crucifixion, I don't remember exactly how this happened, but I looked up to my right, and coming over the piano and over the top of the fence was Paul Schaefer wearing the Jesus makeup.
See, that's what I mean.
So there was nothing professional about Paul.
No, of course not. Well, and there was that other, in the long run, you resort to things, you're kind of losing your mind. And
not if you're a pro.
Well, there was a period of time where I used to actually leave the bandstand. I hate to admit it was Steve Reinhardt sitting right there. But just for a break, I'd climb down, out of view of the audience, climb down and just be down in the green room, taking a break but listening, but I missed my cue for Learn Your Lessons Well, the first one with Gilda. And oh my God, and it sounded like a half an hour went by, a couple of seconds really. And I went rushing up there and joined in, and obviously when it got to that lyric, she turned to me and said, you better pay attention.
Well, obviously we were a very bratty cast. There was when the rise of man, the decline, when you come out in the circle, Andrea came out with a bun in her mouth and she knew the audience couldn't see her, but only we could see her, and everybody had to just control themselves and keep going. So yeah, we're kind of a bratty cast. I mean, everybody loved the show, but there was that element of, there was a lot of comedians in the show. But I agree with you. It's just, I loved it that at the beginning, you have like this joyous show. And then at the end, when Jesus is dying on the fence, it's just, I'll never forget it. It's truly, truly magical. And carrying him out. And then also, as I said, we were at the Royal Alex. We were young. I was a little older. I was about 24. To see that audience rise to their feet, giving us a standing ovation, we couldn't believe what was happening. So it was a joyous ride from there on. And we made $160 a week. We were loaded.
Wow.
We forget how controversial this show was, how it was picked
Yes. Mhm.
all over the country by zealots thinking that it was blasphemous to have Jesus be a clown. And now it's just a sweet show. People, they don't understand what the impact it had at the time. I'm putting together a video. I think you know that. I'm putting together a 15-minute fun trivia event that's 45 minutes long. And I fell into the Godspell rabbit hole. And I'm now honoring all the creation and origins and originals. And I sit and laugh and cry every day.
Oh, yeah.
He's such a mushy ball.
Totally. I want to thank you all today for being a part of this. This has meant the world to me, and for the fans around the world who are going to watch us at BroadwayWorld. This has been so great.
Happy Golden, everyone. Bye.
Bye.